Welcome to Tough Conversations with David Wood, where play meets depth. We help teams and high-performing leaders like you to master your tough conversations so you succeed in your career and in your life. When we avoid tough conversations, we stay small. Teams stay disengaged, conflicted, and ultimately end up quitting. When we lean in and master our tough conversations, they become the defining moments that literally shape our careers, our relationships, and our lives. So let's dive in and master your next tough conversation so you can be the leader that you would follow. Let's play.
I would say, I think the question is what's valuable. It's the question of what do I need to do, or who do I need to be, or what do I need to become in order to fall in love with this moment? You know, what needs to change in me, or what is it? My thinking? Is it my interaction with someone? Is it the way that I'm thinking about things? Right.
Well, all right, we are live. Welcome everybody. I'm excited for my next guest, which is Chris Attwood of the Passion Test. I've got some really fun stuff to read about Chris, some highlights of Chris's life. But first I want to say I met Chris through the Transformational Leadership Council, which you may hear about soon. And we found we had a common connection in Byron Katie. Mm-hmm. And since then we've gotten, in my world, pretty close and have supported each other. And I chose Chris because he's one of the happiest people I know. And I think that's what we're really looking for is happiness in life. So let me tell you a little bit about Chris. Chris is the co-author of the New York Times bestsellers, The Passion Test, The Effortless Path to Discovering Your Life Purpose, and Your Hidden Riches, Unleashing the Power of Ritual to Create a Life of Meaning and Purpose. Over the past 30 years, Chris has been CEO or senior executive of more than a dozen companies. He's sold millions of dollars in consulting and training services to companies like Ford, Dell, and Sprint. And then, for 10 years, he focused on his own inner development. And get this, he spent 8 to 10 hours a day in deep meditation for 10 years and studied the Vedic literature of India, I guess in his massive spare time, and the functioning of human consciousness. During the past 10 years, Chris has become one of the leading figures in the transformational industry, having played a key role in pulling together interviews for The Secret and sold over 20 million books worldwide. Chris is a founding member of the Transformational Leadership Council, created by Jack Canfield of Chicken Soup fame. Chris, welcome to the Play for Real podcast.
Thank you, David. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. So I want to start this before we get into the topic, which is how to be truly happy. I want to ask you, what's the toughest conversation you've ever had? Because tough conversations is something I'm very passionate about, to living a happy life. What's the toughest conversation you've ever had?
I have to admit, I haven't had a tough conversation for quite a long time. And I would say, as I mentioned to you, David, I think that tough conversations, we consider conversations to be tough when we're afraid of something. We're afraid of what someone else is going to think, what they're going to say, what they're going to do. Something could happen to us. Our life could get upset, whatever. But there's some fear at the basis of that. And so that fear causes us to want to avoid that conversation. And so when I was thinking about this, I had to go way back, back to about 45 years ago, 44 years ago, something like that, when I was 23 years old. And I had just gotten married 6 months before. And then being young and stupid and irresponsible and not really having any clue what marriage was all about, I just thought it was a celebration of, I'd been together with this woman for 5 years. And so we were just going to celebrate our relationship I don't think that's the way she thought about it, but that's what I was thinking. And then I fell in love, quote unquote, fell in love with someone else who would have been an absolutely terrible mate for me. But at the time I was head over heels in love. And then I had to go back to home and tell my wife that I was going to leave her, that had fallen in love with someone else, and that our relationship was over. Yeah, that was not such a fun conversation at the time.
Wow, honey, I'm home. And I love someone else and I'm going.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow. You know, what I'm struck about this, what strikes me about this is you had to go back how many years?
44
To,
years, something
you had
like
to
that.
go back 44 years to find a tough conversation.
Well, no, to find the toughest conversation.
Oh,
I would say
okay.
I've had tough conversations since then. That was probably the toughest. But I
Right.
would say it's probably been 8 or 10 years since I've had what I would consider a really tough conversation.
Wow. And my guess is that that's not because you're a chicken.
No, quite the
Be,
opposite.
yeah, because that would be the main reason that a lot of people wouldn't have had a tough conversation for 10 years. But for you, it's because the toughness started to dissolve.
Yeah, well, I, I mean, the truth of the matter is, David, is that I learned some time ago that the way that I grow is by standing in the fire of my own discomfort. And so I began to look for opportunities to be uncomfortable. I mean, that's not quite true. Because none of us, does anyone have to look for opportunities to be uncomfortable in life? No, they seem to show up without our asking. So it wasn't like I was going, oh, let me be uncomfortable, although sometimes I did a few of those things. But it was more like whenever I noticed, if I felt like something might be a tough conversation, for example, I say, all right, let me do that as soon as possible, man, because I knew that
Wow.
that's how I'm going to grow. That's how I'm going to expand. For 5 years, my daily practice was what do I need to do, be, or become in order to fall in love with this moment right now? And so part of that was really getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And from my perspective, David, and I think we've had conversations about this probably, but from my perspective, that really is an expression of this question that you raised of what does it take to be happy, or the word I would use, I think more, which is a little bit more accurate, what does it take to live a fulfilled life? Because happiness tends to come and go in my experience. It goes up, it goes down. But it's possible to live a life which is fulfilled, whether life is going up or life is going down, whether it feels good or it doesn't feel good in that moment.
Wow.
And that's been my aim in life.
Wow. Well, let's slow it down a bit because there's a lot, I think there's a lot of rich territory here. So, what I heard you say is that you looked for the tough conversations and then you kind of took it back, but it sounds to me like you leaned into them.
Yeah.
When they came
Yeah.
along, you didn't go, oh, damn, I got this tough conversation. You went, hey, what could I learn here? So, that seems like a real important point there.
Well, I began to reinterpret. That's the way I would say it. And if anyone's listening, I think for me, this was the process. Is I began, when most people think about a tough conversation, they think, oh, it's something I have to go through or something that I have to uh, avoid if I can, or something along those lines, right? And that's just a concept. That's a belief, right? So if I can reframe what I call a tough conversation, so it's something to look forward to rather than something to push away, then it changes my experience of it. And the way I reframed it was through this recognition. What I said is that by when I stand in the fire of my discomfort, that's when I grow the most. Okay? So if I noticed that there was something that was coming up that felt uncomfortable to me, then instead of going, oh my God, let me avoid this, let me not have to do this, I went, oh boy, I get to grow, I get to expand. So, and the other thing that I learned along the way is that most of us tend to think that I'm doing my life. If I'm having a tough conversation, I'm going in there and I have to decide what to say and what not to say. And if I say it the right way, maybe it'll come out better than if I don't say it the right way. And as you know, because you also have spent time with Byron Katie, I had the good fortune to spend a significant amount of time with Byron Katie and learn how to question my thinking, question my beliefs. And as that happened, as I did that, then this idea that I am the doer, that I'm the one who's acting, that I'm the one who has to decide what to say or not to say, that began to fall away. And because I began to realize, as Katie would say, but it also became my experience, that I wasn't doing life. Life was doing me, or something, whatever you want to call it, God, universe, higher power, something. Something was doing me. And the way for me that I felt that I proved that to myself was because I could close my eyes and I could try to stop thinking. And I might be able to stop thinking for a minute or two, but then thoughts start coming again, even if I don't want them to, even if I say, okay, no more thinking. I'm not going to have a single thought for the next 2 days. Well, guess what? Thoughts come, they arise. Wow. And where do they arise from? Am I doing it? I want to have no thought, but then the thought comes. So who's making the thought?
I love that. Yeah. Let me reflect some of this back, because again, a lot of really powerful stuff in here. I'll reflect it back, I realized, for me, for you, and for our listeners, to make sure this lands home. So when you reframe it from this is something to avoid, a tough conversation, when you reframe it, then it changes the experience for you. And what I wrote down is it becomes a learning opportunity.
That's right. Exactly.
And then what's required to do this is to embrace the discomfort.
Yes.
And this seems huge to me, like this fundamental, like if we divided the population into people who have this and people who don't, that would be fascinating to look at those two different rooms. The people who have growth as one of their highest values. If I say growth and learning are one of my highest values, then tough conversations become something to look for, to lean into, because I'm going to grow. If that's not one of my highest values, well, I can't speak to that because I don't know what that's like.
Me neither.
I wanted to speak to that, and I realized that's another podcast.
But I do remember it, I mean, if I don't believe that, then I want to run away. Believe me, Janet, my ex-wife and co-author of The Passion Test, Janet and I were married for 5 years. That was one of the most difficult times of my life, not because of Janet, but because of me, because of my concepts, my beliefs, because what was going on inside of me and how that responded and reacted to who she was at that time. And it was really, really difficult. And I know from that experience that when you're not in the place of looking for growth, then the only thought, at least for me, was, get me the heck out of here, man. Let me escape. Let me run away. Let me go anywhere but here,
Oh, whoa. You just hit a hot button for me, because I've been noticing more and more how I want to have a drink of beer or take some medication or something to change my experience. And often my body's tense and anxious and I'm wanting to escape. So I know that experience, and you're saying either we've got growth as our highest value, or one of them, or let me get out of here.
That's right.
So there seem to be, again, almost two different streams. So I'm very binary and dualistic as to how I am generally. So I'm noticing there's this concept of put your attention on what you love and what you want to feel and what you want to have, and that may help it manifest in time and space. When we were telling Byron Katie about The Secret, because she'd watched it but couldn't remember what it was, he said, well, it's about how to get what you want. And she paused for a moment.
I remember what she said. Yeah.
You want to say it, what she said?
Yeah. So The Secret teaches you how to get what you want. I teach people how to love what you have.
Yeah.
To me, that's exactly the same thing. See, if you have this idea that if you recognize that what you put your attention on goes stronger, and for me, what do I need to do to love, to do, be, or become in order to fall in love with this moment now? That was a powerful practice for me for a number of years, because what I began to see is what I had was really fabulous, right? What I began to see is that what I was experiencing in my life was really wonderful, because I was falling in love with every piece of it, every moment of it, right? Whereas up until then, I always thought that the world is out here right? The world is out here and I'm here, right? And so there's a separation between me and the world. And when I had that thought, then I thought the world can do something to me. And if I'm smart and if I'm intelligent, if I work hard, then I can affect the world too, right? And in both situations, there is this aspect of manipulation. I'm going to be manipulated, or I'm going to manipulate something else. And what I love about Byron Katie and that recognition is that life is really about opening up to life, opening up to what is. The comment you made, I wonder what my next thought will be. I wonder what my next experience will be. I wonder what I'm experiencing right now. Katie talks a lot these days about everything I experience is just is in the past. And what I love about the past is it's over.
It's over. That's right. Bridget's just left a comment on Facebook. Bridget Lammers. Hi, Bridget. Very powerful. One equals the other. Love what you have equals call in what you want.
Beautiful.
Yeah, nicely done. So we're actually bringing in these two streams together. Now, I'm happy for anyone who wants to just practice one. Just practice The Secret and, whatever. And if that works for you, great. If you just want to practice loving what you have, this seems to be a real strong key in your life, Chris, of bringing in happiness. And then it seems like the two might actually merge, and
they do merge.
We can do both.
See, this is you mentioned that I spent a long time studying the Vedic literature of India, right? And one of the books that I love is the Bhagavad Gita. It's one of the ancient Vedic texts, and in fact, I read it to my 3 children every day now. We read a little bit of it every day, and if I was to pull out one common theme from the Gita, it's that what leads to unhappiness and suffering in life is attachment. And so, the problems that we experience in life, I'll just speak for myself. The problems that I experienced in my life, I realized were not a matter of what was going on in my life, because life always has ups and downs, right? It's always going through its phases one way or another. But where I experienced suffering, unhappiness, misery is when I was attached to my thought. I was attached to things being a particular way. I was attached to making money, or I was attached to being in this relationship, or I was attached to being treated this way or that way, or I was attached to this kind of success or that kind of success. And when those things didn't happen, then I was miserable. God, it was awful, right? And this is really the core message. A core message of the Bhagavad Gita is that what leads to misery and unhappiness in life is not to want things. It's not a problem to have a desire. The only time that we create suffering in our life is when we're attached to that desire. Okay, we're attached to the fulfillment of that desire. One of the quotes from the Bhagavad Gita is that you have control over action alone, never over the fruits of action. Okay, so it means I can determine what I do or don't do in this moment, maybe, and perhaps not even that, but let's just say you can. But I have no control over what the results will be. And so if I'm attached to the results, then I'm going to be unhappy. I'm going to be miserable, right?
This reminds me of the AA 12-step prayer. God grant me the serenity to, to change the things I can, to accept the things I can't, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Yes, beautiful.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing, to summarize, like if I was to summarize this whole interview and your key to happiness, it seems to be the more we can, one, lean into growth, lean into discomfort as a growth experience, two, fall in love with the moment as much as possible, and three, notice where we're actually attached to the outcome being a certain way and letting that go where possible, to get that I'm actually not doing life. Life is doing me. Yeah. How's that for a summary?
Good, except the second one, to fall in love with life as much as we can, I would say, I think the question is what's valuable. It's the question of, what do I need to do, or who do I need to be, or what do I need to become in order to fall in love with this moment, you know?
Well, what
What needs to
about,
change in me, or what is it? My thinking? Is it my interaction with someone? Is it the way that I'm thinking about things? Right?
well, let's use an example. Let's suppose I'll bring up a personal one. I'm tired a lot, and I'm just sitting there today working, thinking, why does my brain not have more juice? There's
Yeah.
so much I want to do. This is unfair. I've tried everything for 12 years. So how do I fall in love with that moment? I want to swear at that moment.
Well,
I am. I want to.
and why do you think you want to swear at that moment, David?
I think it's wrong, and I'm annoyed, and I'm comparing myself to other people, and then it seems unfair.
Okay. And it also, from what you said a moment ago, it also sounds as if you have the thought or the belief that there are things you either want or should do. You want to do or you should do, right?
Yeah, that's right. I have this whole
Well,
world of.
what if you didn't have any concept that you ever needed to do anything? What if
I'm
there was
feeling
no
it.
belief that, oh, in order to be worthwhile or in order to be fulfilled or in order to feel purposeful or meaningful, I have to do something. There's something that I need to do. What if you were just a lucky person who got to lay around and do nothing all the time?
Hearing that, my body just relaxed, and my attention went outside. Actually, I'm going to show you. We've got forest cam here. My
Hmm.
attention just went here, and I thought.
Ah,
So
beautiful.
what happened was peace
Yeah.
at that idea. You nailed it.
Yeah. So,
So
and
I'm
that's a
attached.
beautiful example, David, is when we're attached to a concept, a belief, in this case, that I need or want to do something, and then we don't get what we want, then we feel unhappy. It's very
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah, and Bridget just said because you're attached to a different outcome. That's
Yeah,
true. I have some attachment to my business going a certain way, to
yeah,
harnessing the thoughts and energy and possibilities that are flying through my brain, even though
yeah,
I'm complaining about my brain. Oh, I
yeah.
just noticed that. I
Mm,
hadn't seen that. I'm complaining about my brain and saying it should have more energy, and yet I've never been more creative.
yeah. Well, listen to you. I know few people who are as creative as you are either. God, hey
Wow.
guys, anybody who's listening, can you imagine what David would be like if he was not tired? Oh my God, I don't know if the world could handle it. I think we're all being protected, David.
That,
The
yeah,
universe is very kind to the rest of us to keep your creativity down to a point that all the rest of us can handle it.
yeah, that could be dangerous. Something I got from this whole conversation of attachment and fear is the antidote to fear is curiosity.
Mm.
We could say curiosity is
Yeah,
the antidote to attachment as well. It's like,
yeah.
what's going to happen? Well, I did want to wrap up, but then I remembered another question I wanted to ask you,
Okay.
which is, I deal with a lot of people in the personal world. Some of our listeners want to relate this to their life, some want to relate it to their own business, and some to the corporate world.
Yeah.
And I've been coaching a lot of managers and executives recently. How does this relate to corporate life? This idea of attachment and this idea of just flowing with what is and loving the moment. Is that going to work in a world where we need to make a profit?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, the whole idea of flowing with what is and all that, it sounds very airy-fairy and not very appropriate to the corporate world. The thing I would focus on if I was talking to business people is, thank you, Bridget, that's great. I love those comments. Um, if I was talking in the corporate world, the thing I would focus on is when do you get the best results? When you're attached or when you're not attached? When are you most effective in a negotiation? When you're attached or when you're not attached? If you look at the greatest negotiators, the people who are most effective in being able to create outstanding results, do you notice that many of those people, maybe not all of them, but many of them are the ones who are willing to walk away from the table at any time? They're willing to
Right.
just say, hey, if this doesn't work for you, I get it, and walk out the door. The one who's attached, the one who says, oh, but I have to make this deal happen. I have to get this result. I have to have this thing happen. Well, that's the one that's in the weaker position
Yeah.
because they have to, it has to work for them. So they have to give up stuff that maybe they don't want to give up, because otherwise their world will collapse. The one who wins, the one who's successful, is the one who says, my life is fine, my world is fine, my company is fine, with or without this deal. And
so
that's
ironically, giving up attachment can have you enjoy what is, and it can have you create better results.
Absolutely.
At the same time.
Exactly. At the
Bringing
same
back
time.
those two philosophies again.
Yeah.
What I'm getting from this is, if I'm not doing my life and I'm open and even curious to what's coming, then I don't have to be afraid.
That's right.
And there are no tough conversations, because if I've let go of my attachment to the outcome, then I might even want it to go how it wants to go.
There's one other thing I have to add on this, because this idea, I know it sounds very fairy when you use certain words, but this idea of being in the flow is also really the most powerful position to act and work from in a company or out of a company, frankly. And the best example you see of this is in professional athletes, because the very best, most successful professional athletes are the ones who they describe that there comes a point when they are just in the zone, right? Where it seems like their actions go by themselves, where they can feel, they sense the opponents coming, and the dodging and the moving happens almost automatically. And any really great, I believe, any really great CEO, any great businessman also has this experience from time to time, if not all the time, of being in the zone, where the decisions just seem to come automatically, where the right decision, you feel it in your gut, you know what it is. And that's what being in the flow, loving what is, if you will, that's what it means for me in a corporate context. It is a characteristic of the most successful, the most phenomenally admired people in our world, whether they be athletes or corporate executives or artists or whatever, that people who can experience that transcendent state, which some have described of being in the zone or being in flow, those are the people we admire most in the world.
Yes. Yes, thank you. Chris Attwood, where can people find out more about you?
The vision and the ideas that rattle around in my brain can be found at thebeyul.co. So that's the, T-H-E, Beyul, B as in boy, EYUL.co. And anyone who's interested in that, if you're interested in the topics we've been talking about, I have offered there an essay I wrote a year or two ago, in which I attempted in as few words as possible to summarize everything I've ever learned about life. And it's called Discovering and Understanding Dharma. And so that's an essay I'm happy to share with anyone. You just go to the site and enter your email and it'll be sent to you.
Chris Attwood, thank you.
Thank you, David. Appreciate you, brother.
You've been listening to Tough Conversations with David Wood. Now it's action time. Mastering your tough conversations will have a major impact on your team, your company, and you as a high-performing executive or entrepreneur. If you're ready, request a discovery session with me at playforreal.life so we can transform your team, your company, and you. And if you've enjoyed this episode, I would love you to help me spread this message of tough conversations in a very simple way. Just leave a public review at playforreal.life/podcast. And you may hear me read it out loud and thank you live on a future podcast. Now, let's play.